Over most of this year, I've talked mainly about the Metroid Primes, Mad World, and Okami. But none of those are my favorite franchise. My favorite series is, hands down, the Zelda series. Ever since 2007, I've been completely enchanted by this glorious series. To me, this series is the true definition of true video gaming, unlike most of the so-called great games of this generation. So I decided with Skyward Sword coming out this month, I've decided to count down my favorite games from this series. Just remember, these are from my sole personal experience of each game, and my opinion won't be the same as yours. So let's just get into this. Four Swords was the one Zelda game, up until 2 months ago, I never had the chance to play. It was because no one else had the game or any connector cables so I could do multiplayer. I watched the title screen for this so many times, wishing and wishing I could play this game. But then, 2 months ago, the anniversary version came up on the eShop, and I finally played it. And you know what? It was a disappointment. While it was a good game, it didn't live up to the expectations I'd made in my head for 6 years, and it was in the end really not much fun playing solo. So, in short, Four Swords, good game, but doesn't match up. I would guess that most of you anticipated this would be low. Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Of course, there's the obvious criticism that this game is a side-scroller, but I can look past that. The reason it's so low is because
this shit is so hard!
I've never beaten this game, totally because of the sheer difficulty of it. But the game was pretty revolutionary in the series. With the introduction of the magic meter, towns, and several new enemies to the series, this game is still very good and worthwhile, which makes it place at number 14.
Oh, come on! That's stupid!
Yeah, the original at number 13. Just remember that this is my personal opinion, and there's nothing wrong with the game. It's me. I just can't get into this game. I end up lost and confused going through this maze of an overworld. But this is the game that started it all. This is the game that all other Zelda games draw from, and every adventure game strives to be. So, that's all I gotta say. Let's continue with the list. In 2000, after 6 years without a handheld game, Nintendo decided to release two brother and sister Zelda games. The brother was known as the Oracle of Seasons. The game takes place in the land of Hollandrum, where an evil ruler, Onox, has kidnapped the Oracle of Seasons, Din, and sent the seasons out of whack. With the power of the Rod of Seasons, Link has to fix the seasons and defeat Onox. The gameplay is fairly straightforward, your classic Zelda gameplay style, but honestly, I feel this game was done a bit lazily. Practically all the bosses are from previous Zelda games, and it focuses a lot more on simple combat than actual puzzles and challenges. That's why I prefer its sister game. Speaking of, Oracle of Ages was released at the same time as Seasons, but I find this one more enjoyable. It takes place in Liburnia, where a sorceress named Varen has possessed the body of the Oracle Nehru and uses her to travel through time and change the future. This solves some of the problems I had with Seasons. There's less focus on combat and more on puzzles, the bosses are original and make good use of the weapon received, and the introduction of the three animals, Mush, Ricky, and Dimitri, was a great addition. A lot of what you'd expect from a classic handheld. After the disappointment of being unable to play Four Swords, I was really convinced I would never play a Four Swords game. Then this happened. Four Swords Adventures on GameCube. Whilst this gave the option to play multiplayer using the GBA connector cables, there was a single-player option allowing you to control all four links individually or all together using formations. The levels took on a more arcade linear style of gameplay. So instead of exploring the overworld and finding items and dungeons, this game shows more of a level selection screen. While this game is a very enjoyable experience, it does differentiate a bit too much from the other games. The first handheld Zelda game to ever come out was Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. While the graphics were a downgrade from the SNES at the time, the reason this game was so good was that with just 2 AA batteries, you could take this game everywhere with you. The game takes place on Koholint Island, where Link has shipwrecked onto and must get off the island by reawakening the legendary Windfish. As simplistic as the game was huge. There were tons of references, fun weapons, excellent gameplay, and great replay value. And the game got even better with the DX version, introducing color and a new dungeon. Epic game is epic! The Minish Cap was released in 2005 and was the first handheld Zelda game I ever beat. Minish Cap has been talked as the first in the Zelda timeline because it introduced several key aspects such as Link receiving his hat for the first time. I love how this game goes into detail with your partner Eslo and the villain Vati, going into their origins and backstory. Also, Eslo's comments are hilarious. It introduced several new weapons such as the Gust Jar, the Cane of Paki, the Mole Mitts, and the Flame Lantern. The ability to see your environments through 2 different perspectives was really enjoyable and intuitive. With the several new extras and great amount of unlockables, this is a solid Zelda game, fitting for all. When the DS Zelda games came out, I was very skeptical about the control scheme controlling everything with the stylus. But it works! Spirit Tracks was a really solid game. Well, to be honest, this was a game I really didn't have high expectations for. I just thought it was a cheap rendition of Phantom Hourglass to fill the void between the release of Skyward Sword. But this really surprised me. It made more use of the DS's capabilities, introduced several interesting new weapons, awesome bosses, and featured Zelda as your helper. Although I feel the train was a bit drawn out and didn't really leave much to explore. But still, one of the best DS games around. He went Super Saiyan! This game was the first Zelda game I ever played. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I first played this game when I was 7, but I had a hard time getting into it because I wasn't used to playing games this complex without a strategy guide by my side. But when I was 11, I finally picked up the game and got through it. This was the game that took me the longest to beat. The 2 worlds were huge, there were so many secrets, and the game itself was extremely tough. But I'm glad I did. I started in 2007 and finished in 2008. Time, cruel and fearful. A swamp, for one is about to be executed for a crime he did not commit. A sea, where a fallen musician can only lament his failure. A mountain, where a leader is powerless to save his people. A valley, where the ghosts of the past still fight a war that has long since ended. A town, caught between it all, where the world ends. And one boy, a hero, with all the time in the world, and no time at all, to save this world. This is Majora's Mask. Yeah, although I've said this game terrifies me, this game is very beautiful. Every character has a story to tell, with most being heart-wrenching and tragic. Not only that, the transformations were intuitive, and the time travel was done very well. Although it is lower because the story itself isn't that long, the side quests are a bit drawn out, and, of course, out of every Zelda game, there is none I have replayed as much as Phantom Hourglass. I mean, honestly, when I first moved halfway across the world, it was holidays, so there was no school, no friends, and no communications. It was a very lonely time for me. But Phantom Hourglass was the one place I could always find refuge. The stylus controls, the usefulness of weapons, the feeling of freedom on the boat, the epic dungeons and boss battles. Out of every portable Zelda game, this is the one that has stayed in my heart as being my #1 recommended DS game, and a great continuation of the game line concluded with Spirit Tracks. Yeah, Ocarina of Time as number 3. Even though I am a huge Zelda fan, I have to admit this game has been given a bit too much hype. But that's not saying this game isn't amazing. It successfully brought Zelda into the third dimension. It introduced several new mechanics no one ever thought of, and it's extremely entertaining and replayable. I've beaten this game on my GameCube, my friend's Nintendo 64, and my 3DS. Ocarina of Time is an amazing game, and deserving of its praise, but it's not my favorite. I know that most people will disagree, but just remember, my list. So my number 2 is The Wind Waker. I know the many flaws people have pointed out. The art style? I personally loved the art style, bringing out the bright colors and cheerfulness of the game, while also highlighting the dark portions. The sailing? Well, if you can handle all the cod crap, the sailing should be easier than taking a shit after downing a tub of laxatives. Now on to the rest. The world is the largest I've ever seen in a Zelda game, on 49 separate quadrants. The items are awesome. The new systems, including the items in stealth, are intuitive and done very well. And it started the trilogy of Zelda games, including the DS games. But the thing I love most about it is the characters. Because they geared it towards a younger audience, the characters were allowed to show their true colors. And of course, my favorite, Link. Yes, you all guessed it. Through the process of elimination, you've already figured out that my number 1 is The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. This is the one single game that made me fall in love with this series. This is the one game out of every other game I've played that I would classify as perfect. The story, perfect. The gameplay, perfect. The items, perfect. The soundtrack, perfect. Just everything, perfect. This is my favorite game of all time. As much as I love Okami and the Primes, they have never hit me at the deep personal level this one has. I'm Speedster, and come on Skyward Sword! The ability to see your this is just going completely on our shit, but